Going everyone, welcome back to another rookie review. This time we are talking about Gradey Dick, who is one of the best shooters in this rookie class, had a really nice season with the Raptors, and we're just going to break down how good he is. I feel like a lot of people didn't watch the Raptors, myself included, because they were just kind of, middling for a lot of the season. But a lot of what Gradey did, I think, is really notable for his projection. It's just like a jumbo shooting with some maybe two-way stuff wing going forward. So like, subscribe. We're on our way to 10K subscribers. The support has been amazing. Thank you all. Gradey Dick, dribble handoff, deep threes. He is a ridiculous tall movement shooter. I think you're like 36, 37% on pretty high degree of difficulty shots. Like from deep, off the dribble handoff. He's so comfortable setting his feet quickly, rising up off of these movement jumpers. And yeah, you have to play Gradey Dick out to 28, 29 feet because he's going to fire from there. We've talked plenty of times on this channel about how that opens things up for you and about how the ability to pull from deep makes you more of a threat. And Gradey is a threat to shoot when he's run off the line too. Like KCP jumps because he knows Gradey is a shooter. The respect that Gradey already commands as a shooter is pretty ridiculous, and we're going to see that throughout the video. Beautiful little step back move there. Gradey going to can that one. Like, he looks like a potentially future, like, really legitimately S tier tall shooters. Legit 6'7", can shoot over players, and he has this off-ball feel kind of sense for the game that I've talked about being really important and kind of hard to develop skill for a lot of elite shooting prospects that might not necessarily have this. Gradey's simply going to lift up here when quickly fills the corner, make himself available. He makes his playmakers' lives easier by being in spots where it's easier for them to pass. That's just a really valuable trait for a shooter to have. Sprinting to his left in the corner, like the Raptors can call up these sets for him where they're just going to set a bunch of screens. First, they have Gradey set a back screen before Olynyk sets the screen to free him up in the corner. That's some nice after timeout stuff, or not after timeout, baseline and bounds is what I meant to say. And Gradey's ability to relocate, to do the Steph Curry relocation and get himself open after a drive. We'll talk about some of his other scoring inside the arc at some point, but Gradey, we unfortunately don't get the beginning of this clip. Rest in peace the high-low, by the way, which I use to basically get all of my clips for these videos. I hope it gets back online. But anyways, Gradey Dick hanging in the air, passing out of this drive. Boucher cuts and he relocates out to the corner, ends up getting the three. Once again, look at him not just standing here in the slot. He's going to slide down to the corner, mirroring Pascal's drive, and ends up making the pass easier for him. He really just has this knack for how to get himself open, even without these like design sets that obviously he can run off and shoot off the dribble, do the kind of JJ Redick, Duncan Robinson thing. Gradey is a monster, dynamite shooter. There are certainly questions about his game. We'll get to those. Shooting is not one of them, nor is his off-ball movement. We're going to talk a lot about Gradey's cutting, but he sees LeBron. He's turned. He's not going to be in momentum to recover here. Hard cut middle, quick catch, fadeaway jumper over LeBron. Like, that's just a natural shooting talent. You know it when you see it, right? And Gradey Dick is a naturally gifted shooter. We saw it at Kansas. He was dynamite there, and Gradey's ability to score and pull up in the mid-range is really great as well, right? Like, you can't just totally play the three-point line. You have to consider his ability to put the ball on the deck, take a dribble or two, and pull up over a sagging defender. It really adds to his shot versatility, how deadly the shooting feels overall. But outside of jump shooting, his scoring is pretty rough. That was always the major limiter of Gradey from ever being like a real star, superstar prospect. Just that everything with the ball in his hands is a little shaky. He's not the greatest handler in the world. J-Dub easily able to poke him and go the other way for a wide open layup. Gradey is just not a very dynamic creator off of the dribble. He can struggle in these closeout situations at times, which he is, I'd say, more good than bad for a rookie because he's such a dynamic shooter. Defenses have to play him like one. But again, he's totally spooked by this Jalen Suggs dig and recover. And of course, it's Jalen Suggs. Shout out the top 10, the top 25 defense series. It's Jalen Suggs. But again, Dick's inability to control the ball means that he picks it up early. He'll kind of panic in traffic. His handle is quite weak at this moment. And I do think that's going to be one of the main improvement points for Dick going forward as like a secondary handler. but he's just not very quick and doesn't have that much juice attacking the rim. You can pretty much see it whenever you watch him play. This was never a strength of his, that ability to create separation off of the dribble. And it probably is going to limit him to being mostly an off-ball guy long-term, I would say. And that was always baked into the calculus with Gradey. This isn't a surprise or anything, I would say. Just doesn't look super comfortable on a lot of these drives and finishes. He's a pretty good vertical athlete. Like, Gradey can get up, as we'll see at some points in his videos, but just like the coordination, the body control, the balance, all of that stuff is pretty out of whack. And of course, he's not super strong. He's a 19, 20-year-old rookie. I'm far from freaking out about Dick's strength or anything, but I do think these offensive concerns are probably going to ultimately be what limits his ceiling from being a legitimate, like, consistent all-star type player, which I think maybe is in the cards for Gradey, given how dynamite of a shooter he is, but still not necessarily super likely. And we see the great off-ball movement before this kind of difficult play here, where Gradey does a nice job cutting to the other side of the floor, making himself available again in the corner, draws a hard closeout, but it's really difficult when you're playing against really good defenders like Jalen Johnson, who don't have to run you off the line to contest the three. They can move their feet, and Gradey, again, just not strong enough to draw fouls or do anything like that. He's just not very good in these 1v1 isolation situations. Now, of course, that's not going to be most of what he does, and that's totally okay, but I do think that's going to be a thing that limits the ceiling. And there's just some of these plays where I don't think he picks his footwork particularly well. I don't think there's much of a reason to go off-foot scoop there. And off of 1 foot, he's definitely not as bouncy. He struggles to get up off of 1 foot. Definitely, like, the weird off-foot stuff here is a fantastic cutter, though. Najee Marshall's top blocking, does not want Dick to go and take this dribble handoff, so he audibles, goes back door. Chris Boucher finds him. The finish needs work, but Gradey's process of creating these shots for himself off the ball is phenomenal in all of these scenarios. Look at Gradey here. He's going to tip in the offensive rebound. Just feels like he's in the right spot at the right time a lot of the time. And that's a trait of a lot of really smart role-player-y types like Gradey's going to be. And look at him work. He is truly a workhorse off the ball. And not everyone, even the great shooters, are willing to run and grind off of the ball like this. Starts against Cade, pushes off a little bit, swim moves Ivy, cuts back door, bends to get beneath him, catches the pass, and finishes strong in traffic. Like, that's a really damn impressive play to me that maybe not, some others wouldn't agree that this is that impressive, but I do think Gradey's ability to legitimately create shots for himself off the ball. He is a legit off-ball shot creator, and I think that's a truly valuable skill for a guy who isn't going to be a real on-ball creator. Gradey is just not that guy, so the fact that he can set up his own shots at the rim, especially, and in the mid-range, with off-ball stuff, and it looks like the Raptors are definitely going to lean into that. Scotty Barnes is just a fantastic pairing, as are like Olynyk and Pirtle as well. We're both really good. And Gradey's constant movement and high motor really aid this play style, where he's going to get a goaltend here, I think. But notice how this is after a Gradey Dick missed three. He pulls up in transition, misses, but instead of just sitting back, he notices the middle's open, cuts, ends up getting a shot. And yeah, I mean, that's a goaltend. That's 2 points, but that's 2 points created by Gradey's just sheer IQ, and he's so good at curling these screens in where, again, defenses, Corey Kispert, like, they have to fight hard over to keep Gradey from catching outside of the three-point line, but Gradey can simply round his cuts into the middle, and Corey's on his back. He's got an easy, that's not Corey Kispert, is that Jules Bernard? Oh my goodness, those Wizards teams, man. Those Wizards teams were quite something last year. Gradey's a really nice screener as well, and I love using these dynamite shooters as screeners because they're such threats. Defenses don't want to leave Gradey when he screens because, most screeners you can play off because they're bigs, but Gradey you can't play off. Franz stays attached, ends up running off of another screen, and this is a really nice acrobatic scoop reverse finish. Gradey has nice touch, so hopefully with some core strength improvements, he can improve as a finisher. But there are just some of these plays where it's like, what exactly is going on here? Gradey just hanging in the air, doesn't have much of a plan, throws the ball away. That control element is going to come, I think, as it does with many rookies. But for Gradey, it's something that needs to happen for sure. And there are some plays where it's like, I love his ability to, like, win with the triple threat and the jab here. Again, notice him lifting into the open space here, Gonna jab against Hunter, pump fake, gets him off the floor. I really don't love this like scoop left-handed finish. This is wide open. It does not need to be this difficult. Take another dribble, Gradey. I promise you'll be all right now. But I just think that that kind of finishing improvement will come with better footwork, getting closer to the bucket, because when Gradey attacks off the dribble, he is a dynamite passer for an off-ball wing. That's the other thing that makes me really high on Gradey. He's not just a scorer. He can really, really move the ball, and I think the feel that helps him get his own shots off the ball helps him get others, and it's a lot of simple stuff. Attacking off the closeout, simply passes back to Quickly, who relocates to the corner. Those two are a really fun shooting pair as well. Honestly, I really like this Raptors team. I think they have a lot of fun pieces, and even if they're not going to be that great, I really enjoy a lot of the guys here. But we see Gradey's incorporation into the offense as an off-ball player, aiding his passing success, where he's going to ghost for Scotty here, get to the middle, run a pick and roll with Olynyk, and then he threads a little pocket pass into a nice big window created by the off-ball movement. He's a really nice secondary passer. Again, not someone who's your initiator point guard type, but he is someone who knows how to take advantage of his shooting gravity to create plays for others. Like, look at Draymond Green jumping, selling out to stop the Gradey Dick pump fake. That's going to get Pirtle switched on to Clay, and Grady's just simply going to pass the mismatch and let him go to work. It's nothing crazy, but it's Gradey understanding who he is, how threatening what he does is, and then totally getting the most out of it. And this was some of the stuff that I highlighted pre-draft that I thought was so good. The quick connective passing. Gradey immediately lifting, zipping it to the interior for Agbaji there. There's no wasted time, no wasted movement. Gradey is reading the floor on the fly. He's processing the game really fast. And if you know the channel, you know that's a trait that I value a lot for young players, but just in general, and especially for guys who are going to play off the ball like Gradey, because he really does have great vision, where here he's going to wrap it around to Bruce Brown. Again, we see the Raptors use like off-ball closeout attacking to get Gradey downhill, draws the help. This is horrible defense from the Hawks, obviously. It's the Hawks, but still, really good job by Gradey attacking that closeout. And yeah, that was the Hawks, but this is the Nuggets, and that's maybe an even more impressive play here. Gradey takes a dribble against KCP, notices Agbaji cutting, leads him in a tight window. That's just a beautiful play, trusting your guy, and passing with anticipation, all that good stuff that we love to talk about on this channel. Really, really, really impressive passing season. I did think he was going to be a good passer. I definitely expected Gradey to be able to do the easy stuff, but some of the higher level passing flashes, maybe I wasn't so sure he was really going to get to in year one, but Gradey has, and offensively, I think there's so much to be optimistic about. And defensively, is a work in progress, to say the least. I think he was like literally last in defensive EPM among qualified guys, or at least up there. I don't think it was that bad, and I actually made a video praising his defense before the draft. But even I think, at least I hope in that video, I acknowledge that it's going to be a work in progress as Gradey continues to mature athletically and strength-wise. Still has like a lot of filling out to do and just isn't particularly quick laterally. I do think the on-ball stuff is not great. The off-ball defense was always the sell with Gradey. He's a really nice off-ball defender, and we'll still get to some of that. But the size and the quickness and the change of direction skills are pretty problematic. Defenses can exploit his ability to move and turn fluidly in space. And with the spaced out nature of basketball right now, that ground coverage skill is quite important. And I do think Gradey struggles at the moment. He's not great changing directions against quicker players, like totally turning and chasing here, which the Klay Thompson special leaves him vulnerable to a little stop pull up there from international hoops legend Dennis Schroeder there. And just even when he tries to like bump, he's going to get stronger. And I think that's going to, maybe in a couple years he tries to slide and chest bump Bradley Beal to kind of wall off his angle. That's more effective. But 20-year-old Gradey Dick is just not quick or strong or athletic enough to wall off Bradley Beal. And that's honestly fine. Most rookies are like this. Most rookies are bad on defense. If you go to the bottom of any defensive metric thing, it's going to be mostly rookies towards the bottom. And Gradey is honestly a really well-positioned defender for most of the time. Dick knows where he's at. He knows where to go. And he knows to be early and to guard Harris, but he just, goes for the ball, misses, fouls, almost gives up the N1. But I do think that's a good sign for his future if he can kind of improve athletically, because he is in the right place a lot of the time, and that can be hard to teach. But in this world that NBA teams are living in, where they're pinching in the wings really, really deep to stop penetration, you need players who are quick twitch athletes who can make these quick movements and recover. And Grady's just not that. I don't think it's optimal to have him playing as like a nail, quick one pass away help defender, because he just doesn't have the explosion to make that work. I don't think that's a particularly good role for him to play. And of course, it's hard to totally avoid him from that, but I do think he's better in a lot of other ways. And I think this is another example of his good positioning. And there's some moments here, like he walls off Franz until he gets bullied strength-wise, which, you know, is what it is. Immediately recognizes what he has to do, though. Peels to Wendell Carter. He's just not big or physical or imposing enough to make a play. So it does look like to me that Gradey is reading the game well, and he's kind of understanding what he has to be. And you can see that in some of his off-ball playmaking, where he's pretty good at like reading passing lanes. I think he has a great pass lane jumper. That's maybe his best thing on defense, making havoc in the passing lanes, getting deflections. Grady's hands are phenomenal. That was always one of the big selling points for his defense. And I do think that showed early in the season. Recovering, blocking this shot. His screen navigation is certainly a problem. Again, the same issue, strength, turning, like changing directions, the axis stuff where he just can't get around people. But Grady's relentless. He's got the motor. He's going to recover. Great hands to time up that block. So I do think like the fact that there's a baseline of feel and effort means that Gradey at his peak can be a good enough defender. And like I said, he can get up. Gradey is a solid weak side rim protector for a rookie wing, at least in terms of flashes, where really good job sliding down, blocking Denny with his left hand at the apex. If there's more of this to tap into, please let this happen, because Gradey, I think, is probably always going to be limited on the ball. So him becoming a real like weak side help defender would be really nice. And I think plays like this, you can see the Raptors defense at times was such a mess that, like, yes, when you ask Gradey Dick to be your primary rim protector, it's probably not going to go well when you have RJ Barrett and Gary Trent on the back line. There's not really much you're going to do, but Gradey is really early here after this, like, really not very good like screen attempt, just destroys quickly in RJ here, but Grady's in there. There's just nobody to contest Jovic. But I do think a lot of his like intentions are correct, and his head is in the right place in terms of like court mapping and reactions. His reaction time is always really quick. This goes with the hands, is always quick to get his head around, put his hand in passing lanes. It's not easy to lazily pass around Gradey Dick because he is always working in those passing lanes. And this was a really nice play. He's kind of doing the same thing that the Raptors do. They shade hard at the wing. One of the ways to beat that is to cut hard back door. But Grady's reading Zion. He knows where his man is going. Quick reaction, breaks up this lob. This is not a great pass by Zion. Like, he puts this way too low, I think. But still, that's an excellent play by Gradey, reading a play going on behind him. Like, that's really impressive court mapping. It's just one of those defensive plays that makes you think a player knows where all of the pieces are. They have the mini map in their head. And these are plays where you see that too, as Gradey simply seems to know where the ball is going at times before the other players on the floor do, and that results in some real turnover creation. So there is like some real foundation to build on defensively, even if last year it was quite atrocious, and it wouldn't shock me if it was pretty atrocious for the next even year or two until he can develop and just get kind of bullied on screens and against quick guards. The Raptors still not a very good defensive team. Scotty is an incredible defender, but outside of that, Pirtle is solid. It's not great. Yeah, Gradey just trying to chase around the screens at this point. Not great. So there's a couple things on defense that Gradey has shown the ability to do well, like some of the low man stuff, the pass lane jumping, but there are just so many ways to exploit him at this way, and that's common for rookies. I don't think this is anything to really fret about so much, and oftentimes rookies do improve. I would say it's quite common, especially ones who are like tall, right, and have good hands and stuff like that. But I don't think Gradey has to be an incredible defender to be a really good and useful player. Like, think of all of the high volume movement shooters that weren't great defenders or tall, even like your Seth Curry types, JJ Redick types, Duncan Robinsons, Kyle Korvers. I'm not saying he's going to get to that level of shooter, but I think Gradey at his theoretical ceiling provides more ancillary stuff than those guys did at all in terms of playmaking, off-ball feel, and some of the defensive upside with his size. Like, Gradey is really interesting to me because there's such a floor with his shooting. Like, it's unlikely he's ever going to be just like out of the league totally, because he can really shoot, he's tall, and he can pass. Like, he's going to find a spot in a rotation. But there's a couple ways, like athletic improvements, handling improvements, just getting stronger, that he could turn into a really, really damn good player. Like, one of these like critical fourth, fifth starters on great teams that you see teams like the Celtics and the Mavericks, of course they have, and the great Denver teams like the KCP level guys. I think that's very much in the cards for Gradey, and I'm fascinated to see how his career plays out. He's one of my favorite guys in this class, and I can't believe I got to this one so damn late.